Hi everyone, I'm Maile, and guess what? I'm fine. I'm totally fine. Honestly, like a toddler who has just poured glitter into the dog's water bowl, and now it's just like sparkling chaos. Luckily, I have my great friend Tanisha here. She is like a human GPS of the nonsense that is my brain, constantly recalculating, rerouting, occasionally yelling at me for taking the scenic route through trauma, but somehow still keeps me on track. She's here and basically is the only reason that I can talk to you without crying or confessing that I still cry over tuna fish sandwiches because it unlocks core memory trauma. So buckle up, my friends, because we are going to do a deep dive. We're going to laugh at ourselves, we're going to cry, and we're probably going to make a mess of the whole adulting thing together. And that's okay, because fine is a very flexible word in my world.
So I know your podcast and on social media, you regularly talk about Kingston often, but I feel like before we go deeper, I think the listeners need to really know who he was because anyone who wants to truly understand you must really understand who Kingston was and how much he means to you. And so I was hoping maybe we could do a little deep dive in honoring him and remembering him and maybe share who he was before his diagnosis.
Yes, you're good.
Okay.
I can do it.
Okay. So before Kingston's diagnosis, what was he like? What were some of your favorite memories of him
Oh my
as a little
gosh.
boy that stand out to you?
So should I tell people who he is? Just in case
Yes.
they're like, Kingston.
Yes.
Kingston is my son. He was born in 2014. The cool part about Kingston is that out of my 3 kids, I planned him, and I actually tried for 3 years to get pregnant, and I couldn't. And I remember very specifically begging God just to please let me have I just really wanted to have a baby with my husband. I had been an egg donor, and so I had a really hard time getting pregnant, and they actually told me that I would never really be able to have kids. At one point, I had an ectopic pregnancy. When I found out I was pregnant, we had booked a trip to Bali, and we were going to take our honeymoon, because I finally had come to grips with not going to be able to conceive a baby. So once my brain settled into not having any more kids, um, and we're getting ready to go to Bali, I find out I'm pregnant with Kingston. So obviously, we didn't go to Bali. I had 7 miscarriages before I had him
Wow.
and the ectopic pregnancy, and so for him to be here after them telling me that it wasn't even possible, he's truly this miracle baby that I wasn't ever supposed to get to have. So that is Kingston, and then he was born on July 29th, 2014, and when he was born, he was perfect. Just perfect shape head, didn't have that weird squishy face, like, he was just perfect.
He was so cute.
The
He looked like a little man.
he was a really cute baby. Before he was diagnosed with cancer in 2018, he was insane. As a baby, he had colic, and he would projectile vomit all the time. We're talking exorcist type vomit, and he would never sleep at night. I found out I was pregnant with Zuma, his sister, when I found out I was pregnant with Zuma, Kingston was 3.5 months old. Like,
Wait, 3.5 months?
yes.
Oh my gosh. You guys didn't waste any time.
That wasn't it. I hate to say, like, she was an accident, but it was not
A
planned.
surprise.
She was definitely surprised. Remember, too, I was told there would be no more kids. Kingston was never supposed to happen, let alone another one right after that. I have no fallopian tubes, so I don't even know how either one of them are here.
They're like Irish twins.
They are 1 year, 1 month, and 3 days apart.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. Let me tell you, it was the hardest time of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kingston had colic and wouldn't sleep at night. So we would sleep during the day. And at night, him and I would just be up cleaning up vomit. I kid you not. I remember him being in his little crib at the end of the bed. And he'd sit up and he'd be happy and he's all gums. And I would smile over at him. And then he would just be like, vomit everywhere. He would just laugh and go back to doing whatever he's doing. And I was like, is this real? And I would clean it up. And not 2 minutes later, he would do it again and just laugh. I don't think I remember a time in his life where I wasn't constantly cleaning up vomit from him. When he was really little, I'd have so many videos of him running around just butt naked, just happy. He was the happiest baby. I remember being at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, trying to figure out why is he vomiting so much. He also was super chubby, so it's not like it was failure to thrive or anything. He was perfectly healthy and met every mark. I remember at 11 months old, before he could walk, was playing basketball.
Mm.
Um,
You were a very passionate sports mom. I remember going with you to Jaden's, I think it was his basketball game, and
yes,
you were
yes.
embarrassing him because you were one of those moms that stand up in the stands.
And it was what, 7th grade? You're right, that you
Yes,
went. Yep.
that's what it was.
Oh my gosh, did you take me to the one right before I moved out of state?
I think so.
I remember
Yep.
now. It was the last game he played before I moved to California, and I think at the time I was 4 months pregnant with Kingston. Yep.
That was the day that
That you had to ask for my drive.
yep,
I remember now. Yes.
he had hobbies of basketball.
He loved just anything that was with a ball. Before Kingston got sick, he was probably 2, and he would run up to his dad carrying the little golf ball, and he was like, "The goose boost." And I just remember him so clearly. He couldn't say golf ball, he called it a goose boost. And he would play baseball in the house to the point where I had to hide all of the real balls and all of the bats. We would give him crumpled up pieces of paper and paper towel rolls because he could hit that ball hard for 2 years old, and so we would have to play it with paper. I have so many videos of that too. I have one video, must have just turned 3, and he's got Zuma's little baby swing, and there's a ball in it, and he looks over at the camera and he just goes, "Ball is life." And I was like, "Say what?" And he goes, "The ball is life." And he rocks the ball. And then I have a video of Kingston and Zuma at the beach. So if he was 3, Zuma was 2. And it was maybe 3 months before he was diagnosed. He has all of his clothes on, and I'm filming them skipping. They were skipping and running and happy. I sit down on the beach, I put up my camera, and there's Kingston all the way in the ocean. He's in the ocean. I just sat down to breathe, and it's not warm. It was March,
Mhm.
and he's waist deep in the water. I was like, "Oh my God," you can hear me scream on this video. "What the hell are you doing?" And you see him do this little U-turn, and he runs back up on the sand, and he goes, "What?"
Aw.
We used to walk him down on the Manhattan Beach pier over here, and I think it was, like, the 3rd day he had been on 2 legs, and the first thing he did was run headfirst into the ocean with all of his clothes on.
He's a brave little one.
And so many stories I could tell you about where I found him in the street. After I'd gone to the bathroom, I would come out and he was in the street, or I would be taking a nap and I'd wake out and him and Zuma are in the street. This is all before they're 3, okay? And I am convinced that had he not gotten cancer and been put in a wheelchair, that he would have been hit by a car. And I say that now after I've have a I don't know if I should tell you now or later, but there was a medium who said
Oh,
it was
yeah, yeah. Tell me later, tell me later.
okay,
We're
tell you
gonna
later.
get to
Okay.
that. We're gonna get to
Okay.
those.
Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So, how old was he when you actually, when was the first time you realized that something wasn't right and you took him to the doctor, and how old was he? What are the symptoms?
So there really weren't any because I told you he had colic. The
Mhm.
number one symptom of a brain tumor is vomiting. So
Oh.
how would I know when this kid has been projectile vomiting his whole life? Also, when children are diagnosed with brain tumors, a lot of the time their coordination will be skewed. But if you have you ever seen the movie Powder where he was just smarter because of his brain tumor? So Kingston was like messy with a soccer ball. He was Otani skilled. And it didn't make sense because those are the 2 things that you would notice is vomiting and balance interruption, but I didn't see any of that at all. I will say it was probably about I wanna say my mom had come to visit, so he was diagnosed in July 2018, and maybe it was May, my birthday, my mom had come to visit for Mother's Day, that's what it was, and I had said because Kingston stopped he didn't really make eye contact. He would, like his eyes would dart around, and he didn't like to sit still, and he stopped saying, "I love you," and so for me, I thought he was autistic. I remember his godmom being a speech therapist and worked a lot with autistic children. I was like, "Is it possible that's what this is?" I remember telling my mom, "There's just something different about him. I don't know what it is, but there's just something so different," and my mom actually said that it was my fault because I had been going through the divorce situation. So my mom had said she thought that I had created this anxious kid that couldn't sit still. I remember getting very upset with her because I'm like, "I know him and he's different," and I couldn't pinpoint what it was.
Do you think that the projectile vomiting had, even though it was way early on, something to do with his
I
diagnosis?
mean, maybe because I don't know how far you want me to get ahead, but his by the time they found his cancer, it had fully metastasized all over his spine where there was barely a piece of his spine that was not cancer coded.
Oh my gosh. Wait, how old was he when you went to the doctor? Did they diagnose him right
So
away?
in May 2018, that's when I told my mom something was different, like scratching his legs a lot, like all the
Mhm.
time and telling me how itchy they were. And fast forward, I had just, like I said, I was going through the divorce and I had just gotten some financial stability and my own mental capacity to be able to be like, I'm going to put these kids in some activities now. It's time to start living normal, separate from their dad. And a week before he was supposed to start junior Clippers basketball, he told me, "I can't walk, mommy. I can't walk.
Oh
Can't."
my gosh.
And he would just cry and cry and scream and cry. And then he would pull it together long enough to go play at daycare, and then the daycare lady would just hold him and rock him, and he would come home, and at night, I would put him in the bathtub for 15 minutes, and he would maybe doze off a little bit for no more than maybe a half an hour at a time. It was a lot of that for 6 weeks. I went to 6 different hospitals trying to figure out, like, why he was doing what he was doing, and I was sent home for growing pains. They said he had jock itch at one hospital. They said a possible, like, bladder infection. They were really just those, like, shooting fish in a barrel. They were just trying to pick something, I think. I remember one hospital I walked into after I don't think we had slept for a week straight, and he was not throwing up. I do remember maybe 3 days before I went to this last hospital, he sat up and threw up on his pillow, and I was like, I didn't even think it was weird because he'd done that so many times before.
Yeah.
So, I thought nothing of it, I cleaned it up, and in hindsight, children with brain tumors, they will throw up specifically in the morning because it releases some of the pressure on the brain, and then they go about their day normal. But like I said, he didn't have any other symptoms other than the pain in the legs. So, by the time we got him to the hospital, we were there for 2 weeks straight where they were doing a bowel clean out because he was so constipated, because it turns out that the tumor had spread so badly that there was a 4-inch mass on his tailbone, and if you picture a 3-year-old's hips, if there's a 4-inch mass, how big do you think his hips were? They were only maybe 6 inches wide.
Mhm.
So his entire tailbone from hip to hip was coated in tumor,
Wow.
and so it was pressing on every nerve in his spinal column down at the bottom so he couldn't poop, and so when they did an ultrasound, they saw that he was backed up to his chest, so it was hurting all the way up to, like, his heart. That's how far backed up he was with the poop problems, and so they did a bowel clean out, but a week later, I'm like, "He's 3, there's nothing left to flush out, letting him eat."
Yeah.
And so I demanded an MRI, and in July we were there on the 4th of July, 2018, and that's where we spent the first 4th of July that he really could that has memories had memories, but I remember screaming at them because the first week of July is all new medical students, and we were at a very prominent children's hospital in Orange County, and it was all new people that just wanted to put their hands on a real patient. And I remember screaming at them that they were missing something because the first thing I said when I got there was, "I think he has cancer." And I was told that I was casting too wide of a net. And I said, "I think he has spinal cancer or leukemia, and you have to do an MRI." And they just wouldn't. So they did that whole bowel clean out for another week, and after the bowel clean out for a week, I really put my foot down to the point where I was like, "If you don't fucking do what I ask, I'm going to fucking sue you." And there's a lot of fucks in that, and I actually when they finally listened to me, they did take him for an MRI. When they came back to tell me I was right, they did not say, "You were right, we're so sorry." They came back with a behavior contract and told me that I was not allowed to cuss or yell and that I needed to keep my cool, as they told me that my child had fully metastasized
Oh my
grade
gosh.
grade 4 medulloblastoma, which is full brain and he had a golf ball-sized tumor in his brain. His spinal cord was completely coated in tumor, and then he had a 4-inch mass across his tailbone. So all but the brain tumor was inoperable. And with that prognosis, they gave him a less than 5% chance of surviving that
Oh
cancer.
my gosh. So that's how you found out, telling
What with
them
them coming
several
back in
times?
was what?
And after you telling them several times to get it checked, they come back with the behavioral
Yes,
and then tell you the diagnosis?
correct. They came in with the oncologist, the neurosurgeon, and the social worker, and they cleared out the patient that was sharing a room with us because apparently I scared the dad that was in there. But also, I knew my kid had cancer, so I know
Mhm.
what kind of reaction they were expecting.
Mother's intuition.
It just goes so much deeper than that. Remember I told you I told my mom in May, I was like, "There's just something different, and I can't figure out what it
Yeah.
is." So he
Yeah.
was not autistic, he had a brain tumor that was messing up with him, and when he was scratching his legs, that tumor on his spinal column was making pins and needles, and because he was 3, he didn't have the words to describe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you said the survival rate, they told you the survivor rate is was
They
5.
So it was July 6th that they in 2018 that they told me he had brain cancer, and I'm looking at the date that he died, which was July 18th. So isn't that ironic that he was diagnosed in 2018 in July? Sorry. My ADD brain was like, "Ooh, connect the dots." Wow, it's just a lot of 4s and 8s, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, the survival
Oh,
rate.
yes. Okay, so because he was not yet 5, there's a lot of brain development happening under the age of 5 in a growing child, right? The brain grows so fast between birth and 5 years old. Under 5 years old, they do not want to radiate these children. Basically, what they said is that the brain damage that radiation would have caused to his brain and his spinal column, that he wouldn't grow, that he would never live independently of me. And so the best option for him was something called Head Start chemotherapy. I want to say it was 8 or 12 drugs of chemo with a stem cell transplant to rescue him after we wipe out all of his counts. And by counts, kill out everything in his blood. It's hard to explain if you're not a doctor, but basically, they wanted to deplete his entire immune system and then rescue his stem cells and give his own stem cells back. And it was gonna be basically every chemotherapy drug you can think of except for the kitchen sink. And that was to buy time, hoping to keep him alive long enough to get him to 5 years old to then radiate his brain and spine, to buy him the max amount of time if we could keep him alive at all.
How do you tell your son that? How did you tell him and Zuma?
Well, there was really no time for a conversation, so I don't know. They came in with that behavior contract, and the oncologist and the neurosurgeon were like, "He needs surgery now. If you hadn't done what you'd done and pushed for the MRI, he would have been dead in less than a week." So that night was the last time I saw him, quote unquote, normal, because the next morning at 6 in the morning, he went into brain surgery and came out of brain surgery a vegetable. He came back with a condition called posterior fossa syndrome. It took 2 days to try to wake him up. At one point, I remember saying something to the neurosurgeon. I was like, "This just doesn't seem right." He was a really good neurosurgeon, so it's not so much him. 5% chance that kids will develop this rare complication after having surgery in that particular area of the brain. Posterior fossa syndrome disrupts all of your gross and fine motor skills. When he woke up, his eyes wouldn't move in the same direction at the same time. He could not speak. He had what's called cerebral mutism. And then his legs, of course, didn't work. His arms didn't work. He couldn't lift it. He was basically, imagine being anesthetized, but being awake, if that makes sense. Body and your voice do not work, but you are fully coherent. So it was like the symptoms of a stroke patient, only there was no, in a brain scan, there was no proof that had happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there was no telling him any of that. I remember we ate a cookie. It was like his last meal. We're eating cookies, and I remember crying. And
So, aside from the nurses and the doctors that gave you that behavioral thing, were there any nurses or doctors that you connected with that you just will remember?
in the first hospital, hell no. I hate that place. If I could disappear one place on earth with the snap of my fingers, it would be that place. I despise them with my whole heart. And in that hospital, they were in just such a freaking rush to do things situation.
Exactly.
Yes, and I know that what happened was they know that they screwed up.
They did.
And to come in with that was to turn it on me and to make me this crazy mom. I actually heard one of them call me Munchausen at one point. There was one resident, and the only reason I talked to her is because she was older than I am now, and I thought she was an attending. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even spoke to anybody. But she's the only person that listened to me and convinced the actual attending that he needed the MRI. By the time we were moved to the oncology floor, he was assigned to this incredible oncologist. Her name's Dr. Ashley Plant. She is in charge of research at Lurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago. She spoke at his service, and I miss her, actually. I actually ended up banned from that hospital. I don't know if you knew that. So he was diagnosed, he had surgery July 6th, and they banned me on August 8th.
What did they
So
ban you for?
my mom, and there's this long story with my mom, and Zuma had never spent a night away from me, and she wasn't allowed to stay the night. So my mom had flown up from Seattle and she had a new boyfriend, and she was just texting her boyfriend, and she was supposed to be helping me with Zuma, but Zuma didn't know my mom because my mom had only been to meet the kids once before. And so Zuma wanted to be with me. We'd gotten the divorce and we moved around a lot in the first couple of years. And so all of a sudden, Kingston's paralyzed in a hospital and she's at the Ronald McDonald House with this grandmother that she's only met twice. So Zuma had a full blown freak out and my mom was still texting her boyfriend. So I was like, Mom, get off the fucking phone. And I was like, you need to do your job. And Zuma was screaming. And because posterior fossa syndrome, it messes with emotional ability. So heightened stress or like loud noises he just had brain surgery. Okay. And so when Zuma was having that full blown meltdown, I yelled at my mom to get her and get her the fuck out of the hospital. Those were my words. And the nurse was in the room. And so my mom was like, I guess I'm just a fucking fuck up. Right. And so my mom grabs her and is screaming and flailing to get out of my mom's arms. Now, my mom and we used to be super close. I know that my mom would never in a million years hurt my kids. Never. Would she fuck me up? Yeah, she'd probably love to slap me. Like, I'm her toddler. But with my kids, she would never. And what happened was that day, they accused my mom of beating my daughter in the elevator. And so the next morning they came in, and I remember me and Zuma and Kingston were all asleep in the bed together. And they're like, your mom's not allowed to be here anymore. Both. And then I asked for proof because they said that my mom had actually beaten Zuma in the elevator. And when I asked for proof of that, they said the camera in the elevator was broken.
Of course.
Because it's not true. I know that they were worried about being sued. So
Right.
the lawyer for that hospital, she spoke on behalf of my ex-husband at our divorce hearing, and I lost my children.
This was wait, say that again?
I think you heard it right. I think you heard it right.
Oh my
So
gosh.
when I got banned, there was a lot going on in the divorce where their dad and I hadn't even talked in a year. Okay. He hadn't seen the kids in a year since I had left. And because my mom and I had gotten kicked out, I had to call him. And so they let him in. And I thought that he was just going to come in and help me get back in. But he went to court and used me being banned from the hospital to have my children taken from me because CPS was investigating me.
Wow.
And so from that, I did not see Kingston again until October.
How many months was that then that you didn't see
3
him?
months for 90 days.
Wow. How did you even cope?
I didn't. I was a total and complete mess. I'll be completely honest. So this is where if you wanna talk about any of the signs and how God stepped in to keep me alive through any of this, I was not supposed to have any more kids, right? And then the baby that I begged for is sick with cancer. And I remember being on the bathroom floor at home after being banned and wanting to die. But I got a phone call from their dad, and he was like, I don't really know. She's 2. She's crying. I don't know what to do. So I had to go get her. I had to go get our daughter. And had she not been with me, I am sure that I would have killed myself. I am sure that if she had not been born, that I would be dead. God or somebody or the universe knew that we were going to need her to survive any of this. And sometimes, I think, not to change the subject, but a lot of times people ask me, how does Zuma play into any of this? You're always talking about Kingston. I said, at the end of the day, she's really like the hero in the whole story.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she knows that. I've told her a couple of times, if it's not for you, I don't know if any of us would have ever survived what we did. But I believe that Kingston recovered the way he did because of her, and that I'm still alive because of her.
Yeah. I
So,
believe that. I believe that.
so anyways, that was that. Is there somebody I remember? It would be Dr. Plant. And that's because after I got banned, she was the only hospital person that would talk to me. And she actually got in a lot of trouble because she was still communicating with me despite the hospital telling her not to. And then when he was re-diagnosed in 2022, she took us on in Chicago. She actually quit working there after that happened and said it was one of the most traumatic experiences with patients that she's ever had in her career.
Wow.
And that it never should have happened. She was so disgusted.
And you said she spoke at his
Service. Mhm.
service. Did Kingston know that there was a chance that he would pass on?
Mhm.
How did you tell him that? And how does a child
So
even
it's really
understand?
interesting. Remember, he was mute, so he couldn't ask questions. So when he woke up from surgery, when he went into surgery, the doctors rush in and they tell you have to have emergency surgery. If I had been given even 24 hours to process what was happening, I would not have stayed there for surgery. I would have definitely called around to different places. Like everybody always says, why didn't you go to St. Jude? Well, I would have liked to have called them, but they didn't give me time to process what was happening because it didn't even occur to me. Hello, any surgery you could die in. right? Like, you can die getting your teeth extracted, but it didn't. I was just so, oh my God, my son has, because at first it didn't hit me. I was like, okay, we have cancer. And then I remember hitting the ground in the hallway at that night, and I was like, my God, my son has cancer. And I just fell apart. And then I went back in and I was with him, and he was just so happy. I'm like, this just can't. There was something in me that knew somehow he was going to be okay, that like I wasn't supposed to panic, because if somebody had told me these are the possible things that could happen, that he could develop posterior fossa syndrome and you will have to rehabilitate for 4 years and that he'll never be the same, okay? If somebody had told me that before surgery with a 5% chance of survival, I can tell you right now that I absolutely said this 1,000 times, and I haven't really said it to people out loud, but I've thought it, and I think I've said it to their dad, that if I knew the battle that we were going to go on, and so think about this. I don't know how else to say this. Tell me if I'm making sense. A 5% chance survival rate, and you're going to wake up a vegetable, and you have a 95% chance that you're still not going to make it. And then you're going to live out your days as a vegetable because you're not supposed to survive this anyways. Does that make sense where I'm at so
Yes.
far? In my brain, if when he woke up that way, I was like, why didn't you guys tell me this? I would have made him comfortable and let him die then. If that makes sense. Does
Yeah.
that make sense what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But my brain, for some reason, in that moment was like, okay, that we're going to do this. And I didn't pause and I didn't make a different decision, because if my brain had the time to think about our options, I would have opted to not treat him and I would have lost out on 7 more years. So I feel like what had to happen happened the way it was supposed to, because
Yes.
I would have lost him then.
Yeah. You got to
Um,
have several more memories.
oh my God, we got a full decade that we would
Yeah.
not have had. And
Yeah.
I think about it in hindsight. If I had allowed that to happen, Zuma would not know who he was. She would have pictures and be like, who's that? I think Kingston, he's a very old soul. And we're not going to get nearly as far as maybe we had hoped because we're running out of time. But, and maybe this is where we take a break at
Yeah.
5:30. I don't know what other questions you have.
Yeah.
I feel like he knew what he was getting into almost,
Mhm.
because when he woke up with posterior fossa syndrome, he did not cry. And I will post links in the description here and on YouTube and on my socials at hot mess, HAUTE mess.LA on Instagram, and also at Live Like Kingston on Instagram. There are videos of him actually. His birthday is July 29th. He had surgery on July 6th and woke up a vegetable. And then his birthday was 3 weeks later. I have a video on that birthday where he's laying in the hospital and his big brother Jaden walks in and he's carrying balloons and his just face lights up. He's just so happy. We would do this thing where we would just move his feet around to keep his body moving, and he would just laugh. At one point, his left arm started to work, so we put this little basketball hoop on the side of his bed, and he would purposely throw the basketball into the hallway to make people come in, and then he would just slam dunk it. There was never a moment that he complained or cried about it. Never. And I think that the only times that I did hear him cry is when I wasn't able to like read his mind, and we can get into that later. But
Mhm.
his sister, you would think they were actual twins, because at 2 years old, she turned 3 while he was in the hospital. But she would be like, Kingston needs this and this, and he says you're doing this wrong. But they were not talking. There were no words exchanged. But she was never wrong.
Yeah.
When he needed a bath, I did not let anyone else do it. I was like, just give me everything I'm supposed to do. Tell me what order to do it, and I'll do it. So in the 7 years he spent in the hospital, I did not let anyone do that kind of stuff. It was always me, even when I had the help to do it, because that's what made him safe and comfortable. And so
Mhm.
did I tell him he could die? I'm sure he heard a lot of conversations, but was he ever scared? No. There was one conversation that I specifically remember he had with my mom. There's a lot to fill in the blanks, but let's fast forward a year later. There was a phone call he had with my mom, and he goes, Grandma, I'm going to walk one day. I'm not just going to walk, I'm going to run, and I'm going to play baseball. He never said he couldn't do anything. So
Yeah.
I think that he knew he would be okay from that situation. I don't know if you've read the stories much later, and I don't want to fast forward to the end of his life, but Kingston had a little secret, and he let me in on it about 3 months before he passed away, but I don't want to spoil it.
I don't know the secret.
Should I
I'm
tell you now, or do you want me to save it?
Oh my gosh. Okay, save it.
Okay, so we leave
Yes.
everybody hanging and we don't tell them
Yes.
Kingston's big secret? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right, let's let this unfold over a couple of weeks. When you hear what happened, when I tell you what he told me later, I think you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, wow." He just knew a lot of things that he shouldn't have known. Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any other short, quick questions that we should add in, or should we
I do have other questions, but maybe we should make this a part 2 on this.
Okay.
Do you wanna know some of the questions?
No, I don't. I
Okay.
like you doing it live.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It
There's
helps
probably
me.
maybe 7 more questions or so, but then it goes into talking about signs and psychics
Yeah,
and
for
stuff.
sure. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, you have to backtrack and go back. We need to go back to how that plays into what we're talking about today, 'cause
Okay.
there's even crazier signs, like, mom told me about a sign, and you'll never believe it, but she used to send off a heart-shaped red balloon in the
Oh, that's how
cover.
you got the book.
No, but that's not how I got the book.
Oh,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay.
perfect. I guess that is probably enough chaos and enough trauma for one episode. Big love to Tanisha for keeping me semi-sane, and for everybody out there listening while I try to make sense of life without completely losing my mind.
And thank you for welcoming me into this space and trusting me with your heart and Kingston's story. It's such an honor to be here with you. I'm so grateful to be friends with you for so long and to have gone through this journey with you.
Oh my gosh, don't make me cry. We're at the end. Everything's fine. We're gonna be great. Thanks, Tanisha.
Thank
Bye.
you.
I need you to all go out there, make some messes, laugh at yourself, and remember everything is fine. We are honestly all gonna be just fine. If you liked this little trip through my brain, click subscribe and don't forget to tell your friends, because who doesn't want more of my nonsense in their lives? Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go cry over a tuna fish sandwich and I'm gonna call that healing. Bye.